So welcome to what we used to call the Ardennais weekend as we head up towards Liège-Bastogne-Liège. This is the Fleche Wallonne, and 198 kilometres, the world champion there, Cadel Evans, having won his title in Mendrisio last year. This is looking back to the start before we go to the action.
Philippe Gilbert, very concentrated, had a very good cobbled campaign, but now thinking a little bit more about the races which he holds dear to his heart, Fleche Wallonne and Liège-Bastogne-Liège.
There's the signature there as we look at Philippe Gilbert smiling away, and a lovely crowd here, and it's not a bad day either. A little bit chilly in here, as you can see the riders got their arm warmers on as we face up now to a hefty couple of days of racing. Coming on the back, don't forget, of Paris-Roubaix, won so brilliantly by Fabien Cancellara. One thing's for sure, Paul, Fabien won't win today.
He certainly won't. Oscar Freire there signing in now, Andy Schleck. Different kind of riders come to Fleche Wallonne and Liège-Bastogne-Liège. It's the first time we really get to see the Tour de France contenders. Frank Schleck, the older brother of the Schleck brothers.
Radio Shack in the background there. No Lance Armstrong, sadly. This was to be on his schedule, but after the Tour de Flanders, Lance tried the circuit of the Sarthe, where he was ill after the first day. Alberto Contador has made an appearance, though, while Armstrong has gone back home to the United States. Now, is he going to win? Because this is certainly a course that will suit him, although over in the past he's not had a great Fleche Wallonne. This is the route.
Yeah, it starts in Charleroi, as it has done for the last number of years. It moves up to Aiguizot and then into Huy for the first time before they go out and do a little bit of a circuit around the town of Huy. And then on that circuit there's a couple of climbs, Côte de Prédetu, Côte de Huy-Bois, Côte de Boisseau, and then down towards the end, the very difficult climbs of the Côte de Hanin, and then the Côte de Etel right at the very end before the final ascent up to the Mur de Huy.
Well, as we look at some of the previous winners here, it is a slight change to the course this year. The last circuit after they come over the Huy, the penultimate time, is much harder and shorter, and people are saying that it could make a big difference on the last lap rather than the big journey around the Ardennes again. We'll see what happens as we go to the action now at 76 kilometres from the finish. There is the outline of the leading group here now.
Well, these five riders got away very early on, 44 kilometres into the event. And in that breakaway, you can see the French national champion. Now, how about this for a name for a champion? Dimitri Champion.
Yes, that's indeed. This breakaway getting clear at around about 44 kilometres today. Five riders, including Palumbo. They went on the climb of the, of the smaller circuit. Out on that first big lap is where they actually got clear. Palumbo, Loosely, David Loosely of Lampre, there he is at the moment, as Paula said, Champion, and then Benjamin Gorg from Lambau Credit, and making it all up, the veteran these days, just going through screen there, the Stéphane Auger of Cofidis.
Well, the French national champion there on the front, Phil, a bit of a surprise victory for him last year. He used to ride for what was not even a ranked professional team, one of the lesser development squads. The main field looking at a 4.5 minute deficit. That leading group at one time actually had themselves an advantage of over 7 minutes and 10 seconds.
Now, they've all seen the Huy the first time up. They're out on the second big circuit. We've got to climb it again before we charge around the smaller finishing circuit this time around. And this is the back of the peloton. They've still got the long legs on today. It's still a little bit chilly here, coming off a pretty cold winter. Not quite as bad as it was. And as I said earlier, the Ardennes used to be a weekend of racing here, Saturday and Sunday. Now it's spread Wednesday through Sunday. The riders here testing their legs. But nonetheless, it's a significant victory in itself to say you've won this short of the two races. It's 198 kilometres, slightly shorter than normal, with that smaller finishing circuit based on Huy. But it is a very, very difficult climb. And in fact, Paul, a lot of the teams this year, including the new BMC team of Cadel Evans, actually went out and recce'd the course this year to check out this final circuit, and they said it will make a difference.
Well, it's a lot more violent, I think, because of the circuit's a little bit shorter, and they get back to the Mur de Huy a lot quicker than they have done in the past. This is a very tough week of racing as well, though, capped off, started by the Amstel Gold Race, the Fleche Wallonne in the middle of the week, and then, of course, Liège-Bastogne-Liège at the end. And a lot of riders are in two minds as to whether or not they really want to dig deep when it comes to the Fleche Wallonne, because they're concerned about their performance on the weekend race.
And you see Belgium does have chateaus as well. This is a part of Belgium, though, which is French-speaking, and down in the beautiful Ardennes forests. It's excellent racing down here, but it brings out a different type of bike rider. The riders prefer hills, pure strength, and rattling over the cobblestones of Flanders itself. And now looking forward to not just Liège but also the Amstel Gold Race as they move on towards the small stage races that lead us into the big Grand Tours. That's the pattern of the Grand Tour season, of the Pro Tour this year. Sky got that first big win of the year with Antonio Fleche in Het Nieuwsblad on a high right now, and a little workman-like group this.
Well, this is the second group on the road, and they're looking for 3.5 minutes. In this group, you can easily recognise the face there of Jens Voigt. The rider from Sky who is in there is Chris Froome. That's Christophe Moreau, the first time I've seen him this year in the Caisse d'Epargne jersey.
Yes, and also in this group too, Omega there is Jan Bekelons. The Lamprey rider is Daniela Riggi. These boys are trying to get off the group here. There's 5 or 6 of them trying to get clear. The gap is 3:27 to that group of 5 still away. 73 kilometres to go. Lots of reason to jump across the gap. This is Bekelons. Omega's having a pretty good start of the season, ironically, without Cadel Evans now, who always complained his team wasn't strong enough as he's moved across to BMC.
I have to say, though, Phil, Cadel Evans is a much more relaxed and confident rider, having the World Championships jersey on his back. And when we met him in the early part of the season in Tour Down Under, he really did seem to be enjoying his new team. Although the team might not be as strong as he might want to be, I think they're a team that will rise to the occasion to look after him when it comes through to the Tour de France.
Yeah, well, as we always say, time will tell here. It's still a big peloton down there. Roads, for the moment, are dry anyway. But I think everybody's going to concentrate on a huge assault next time up the Mer de Huy, where there's a lovely crowd, as always. Little zoo on the top as well. And then we'll see just what chance this breaker's got. Nobody in it we would talk about, really, as a potential winner today. They've taken the chance very early on. They've been away about 35 kilometres just now, more than that, yeah.
Well, Quick Step coming to the front. They're trying to keep the pace nice and higher. A little bit of disdain on the Quick Step front. Team manager Patrick Lefevre has complained heavily about Stijn de Volder, his ace alongside Tom Boonen, saying he could no longer pay a rider the money that he was paying to try and perform in one race a year.
Yeah, very cruel, but Stijn's always ridden well in the likes of Flanders, and lesser so perhaps in Paris-Roubaix, but then he disappears for the rest of the year. You can't do that, I suppose, and Lefebvre's never minced his words anyway, but one thing's for sure, the Quick Step boys aren't quite the team of old.
Team Katusha as well are very keen to move up to the front in this race. This is the sort of race that would suit them. They've left their sprinters, guys like Robbie McEwen, behind now and changed to their mountain men.
Oh, sort out time has come a little bit early here now, because these boys are working very, very hard indeed to try and bring this race back together. Having recce'd the course, most of the riders have done just that 2 days ago. They know now how steep that climb is. It's something Cadel Evans has never done before, by the way, and it was only because his new team director sportif, Jean Lelong, who used to be involved in the Tour de France organisation, insisted that the team went and had a look at the climb. And so, who knows? And Contador was also seen outdoor with his team as well.
Katusha have got a strong squad here, and that's probably why they're doing a fair bit of pacemaking at the front, because they could count on Sergei Ivanov, they could count on Kim Kirken, and why not Joachim Rodriguez when it comes down towards the end. That's why you can see the red, white and blue jerseys there setting the pacemaking.
Well, Katusha may have some ambitions here today, because they're setting the pace all right.
Oh, it was a crash just on the left-hand side, going around that corner.
Crash. That was the rider shot across from the inside of the peloton and took everybody out.
Well, that was amazing. It just went straight into that bend, and obviously when you come into the forested area a little bit, the road can be slightly damp, and all you need is a touch of brakes, and you can see the skid marks there. There's a rider gone down there on the left-hand side from Astana.
Yes.
2 or 3 riders have gone down very hard.
Carsten Kroon is down here. Is his head on his shoulders there. That looks like a nasty prank. I don't know who it was.
Dominic Rolls is 155, the rider down there from Milram.
Yeah.
There's a couple of riders gone down from Radio Shack. There's a rider down there from BMC. That was a very hard crash, and nobody had a chance to make any manoeuvres to get away from it.
Well, they were unexpected, because the rider, I don't know if we'll see a replay, the rider came from the inside track, I mean straight through the peloton, taking out riders on the way here. Carsten Kroon looks to be in a bit of trouble. Riders still fixing themselves up. That's Christoph Brandt on the far side of the road looking for a wheel, but the peloton is well gone now. This is very unfortunate. Sweeping bend here I wonder if we'll get to see it again in slow motion in the hand of the director, and maybe we will. Watch the bottom of your picture here. There's the rider who falls, a Milram rider, and then wipes them all out. And that was a nasty fall by Kroon. He went over the top there.
Yeah, that was very nasty indeed, very difficult. A lot of riders just did not have a chance to make any manoeuvre at all to get away from that accident. And all of a sudden you can see the guys are scampering over to the right-hand side of the road to get by.
It's amazing the peloton was able to stop and filter around that. The original faller there from Milram is still propping up the barriers at the left-hand side of our picture.
Well, they're saying that in fact is Jaroslav Popovic.
Well, he'll be the Radio Shack, yeah.
And he's a man who would be counted on by Lance Armstrong later on in this season when Radio Shack go through to the Tour de France. Just looking down there, the BMC rider Kroon, he is certainly not in good shape.
The car's getting through. Well, one thing's for sure, those boys are out of the race, and let's hope they're not too badly injured, but that was a particularly ugly crash there. Meanwhile, back at the front, the pros get on with the day in hand as they continue to drive. It's affected the lead a little bit. 2:51 now to that second group, 3:56 the spread. It's not a lot now. 69 kilometres from home as we head round towards Huy. Up the climb again, don't forget.
Obviously,
Popovic, Dominic Rules, Karsten Kroon and Christoph Brandt are the only names we spotted down there. I don't know who the Milram rider was, though, that caused the problem.
Well, this is Martin Velits on the front for Team HTC Columbia. Katusha obviously very keen. Also, you'll note that Astana have sent a couple of riders up there as well. So Alberto Contador Phil, although he's not really regarded as a one-day classics rider, is nurturing thoughts of trying to get himself a win today.
In fact, it was Dominic Rolls. He is the Milram rider, isn't he? I've forgotten about his team. So it was Rolls on the far right of the road that actually swept through the bunch there, first to go down. Back to Dimitri Champion, the champion of France here, setting the pace. There's all the names for you now, as given. Working pretty well together. These guys riding at quite a good pace here, holding a lead of 2:43. Getting away around 44 kilometres in. They were clear last time up the Huy. They've not been out more than 8.5 minutes, the biggest time check that we've had. Stéphane Ogier, seen it all before, this man, having his lunch.
Well, this French champion, again, last year rode for a very small French team from Brittany, and they dominated all the big professional teams. In fact, they finished first and second in the French national championships. And you'll be happy to know that on that occasion, that race radios were banned for the French championships, and they reckon that's why the big professional teams got caught out.
Oh, shame on them. Now, just watching Case de Pan here. That's Christophe Moreau. Now, is he punctured?
He's got a flat tyre.
The back tyre's down, isn't it? Oh, that's a shame.
He won't panic at all, though. He's an experienced professional. I'm amazed to see that he's been brought on board to Case d'Epargne this year to strengthen them up for the big stage races. He's also one of those riders who's becoming a little bit evergreen. He seems to be getting better as the years go by in his career. Former French national champion, finished 4th overall in the Tour de France. Seasoned campaigner. Still
hasn't won a race since Little Criterium in a place called LM back in 2008. No wins last year. And so far, of course, no wins this year. But time will tell. He's 35. Soon to be 36. Well, not soon at all. Next December.
Yeah, well, the main field is starting to stretch out into a fairly long line there. There you can see the side of the road, the neutral service vehicle. There is a split in the peloton because of the acceleration just a few moments ago. And I would think there'll be a few alarm bells as Christophe Moreau gets back into that group. He's going to have to hope that he can recover and get back into the lead.
Still a big peloton here as they make the next loop. The race now by tradition starts in Charleroi, makes its journey out to the circuits, which aren't identical each time, and then they base themselves at the finishing town of Huy. It's a lovely little spa town, and really a straight line with Holland if you followed the river Meuse or Mars. It changes its name as it crosses the border. And there's the gap, 2:32, 66 kilometres to go. Nice to see Leaky Gas. They've been working very hard all season, haven't had a lot to show for it just yet. And Astana, who everybody was thinking was stripped of all of its big names, including Lance Armstrong over the winter and including Johan Brunel, the manager, might become a secondary team on the world of cycling, but not the case, because expecting Contador to move has never happened. Contador is here for Astana, and the team actually seems very strong. So I think if we thought we'd seen the end of Astana in the year 2010, I think we might all be wrong, because they're riding very well.
And well organised as well. That was the fear that Johan Brunel had said was going to happen. The team would not be as solid and organised as it had been under his helmsmanship. However, they do seem to have risen to the occasion a number of times this year, and they still have some very strong riders. But it's going to be interesting the first few days of the Tour de France, which starts in Rotterdam this year, takes itself across Holland and then down through Belgium and into France. And that's when you're going to have a solid block of a team around you.
I must say, seeing their number 17 upside down, we normally see number 13 upside down, but I can't imagine that David Loosely is superstitious with the number 17, but you never know. He's in that second group. Is this a split in the peloton? It's quite a serious split if it is.
There's a group just around the corner. Yes, it has split up quite a bit. I'm interested to see the lime green jerseys of Liquigas, as you mentioned. They're obviously thinking about their man Roman Kreuziger. We're getting to the time of year when he's ridden well in the last 2 seasons. The Tour of Romandy coming up, and of course the Tour of Switzerland, which he's won in 2 separate years.
Now see how different it is. You wouldn't imagine Belgium to be the same in such a diverse country, but here we are now in the Ardennes. These beautiful roads, always better surfaced, virtually no cobblestones, just a little bit, sometimes a spattering in the areas, village in the outlying townships. But usually when you turn off this valley road here in the Fleche, or indeed the upcoming Liège, there's some very steep hills climb away from the valleys.
Good organisation in this group, but you can see what's happening now as the gap is starting to come down as we get to the more strategic part of the event, the more tactical part, and the hillier section of the course. It's come down now inside of 3 minutes to the main field, and that group with Jens Voigt is just hovering in the middle at around about 45 seconds ahead of the main field. I don't think they're actually going anywhere here this afternoon. They're caught in no man's land.
A little bit of a Saxo Bank pursuit now. I expect to see an attack by the Schlecks when they get onto the climb of the Queen next time around. This is their type of race. Just seeing the red jersey of the Aqua Saponi rider in the break pool, Giuseppe Palumbo. Amazingly, he was the World Junior Road Race champion 2 years straight in 92 and 93, yet as a pro he hasn't really cut it.
Well, it's very difficult. A lot of kids are pushed too early on in their careers, and you very rarely find a world junior champion that can go on to be an under-23 champion and then a world senior champion. It's a hard thing to start practicing the sport at 15 and 16 years of age, and we've seen that a lot with a lot of the Australian track cyclists who were great world champions at the junior level of the sport but had a hard time actually making the gap to get across to the senior level.
I think they sometimes look at the life and think, hey, I don't want to be a cyclist from my early teens through to my late 40s. I might have missed out on something else, and the mind starts playing a part, I think. Dedication is tremendous to stay at this level of competition. But well, big rewards.
Big rewards if you want to do it, but a lot of the big track riders were picked up by Heiko Salzwiedel in Australia and converted into top road riders, like, of course, a name that springs to mind is Stuart O'Grady. This is the leading group of 5, and they have done a good job to stay away on roads like this afternoon. The French champion showing off his jersey at the front, red, white and blue. And Loosely here is pretty happy as well to set the pacemaking. Let's not forget this could be the sort of finish for Damiano Cunego down towards the end of this race.
These little coats or hills here, they come occasionally. They're not as many as in the upcoming Liège-Bastogne-Liège or indeed in some of the other Belgian classics. And the only one they're really worried about will be the climb up through the finish, which is steeper than most, to say the least. There are the 2 leaders, the 2 Frenchmen here, setting the pace. Just sat at the back is Palumbo. Only ever had 3 wins as a pro since his 2 World Junior Championships.
Yes, that climb up to the finish of Huy tips out at one stage at 22%. And if you attack the sprint too far out, more often than not, you find yourself cracking towards the finish.
Yeah, it's a long way. It really is a long way, and absolute candidate to go and check it out, because you can so easily misjudge the finish. It's narrow as well, and the crowd are big, so you've got to remember that. And it seems to be just when you think it's all finished, you come round the corner and you see it's not finished at all, and it holds its gradient. 42k now. Oh, sorry, 62k.
Yeah, that group has almost been pulled back into the fold there, and a lot of that pacemaking has been done by Team Katusha with some help from Team Astana, so that would give an indication as to the boys who are taking this race very seriously.
Still 5 riders out in front. Altine, Nice little outcrop of houses here. Farming area. Not a lot of work in this area, I have to say, but it's a super area to come and take a small hotel or bed and breakfast and experiment with your bike in the area. It can be a very pleasant place to go, not heavily trafficked, away from the season, and you're very close to Germany, Holland, Luxembourg.
And in this part of the world, we're actually not very far away from the highest point of Belgium, which is a place called the Barak Fleche, and it's 740 meters in altitude. And believe it or not, you can actually cross-country ski in the winter.
I believe anything in Belgium.
Jens Voigt, the inimitable style of the big German rider who's been around for so many years. He will never lay down and die. He wants to come back and fight all the time. And I said, Jens, why are you so aggressive? He says, well, I have to be aggressive. Even when I go to get my number, I'm aggressive.
Well, the pacemaker there was Thomas de Gent. Just in a very workmanlike group, but the peloton here are certainly not meandering through the Ardennes countryside today, so the group is being held. And they're 2 minutes now behind that leading 5 riders as well.
Nicholas Roach just going through there, the champion of Ireland. I always like to say that he did one thing that his father never did, and that was took himself a very good national title, because Roach never had the title.
No, well, in those days, well, there wasn't a pro title really, but they seem to be getting it a bit together there. This is Voigt pumping those pedals away.
Chris Froome. Chris Froome carries a British passport now, but I always like to remind people that he's actually from Kenya, and he was born in Nairobi and trained at great altitudes, 6,000 feet the altitude of Nairobi, and he moved to South Africa to further his career, turned professional with Team Barlow World, and I think now he'll find himself a lot more comfortable now that he's within this big Sky infrastructure.
One or two gaps forming here, and one or two guys puffing and blowing, and I'm not surprised. This is a healthy pace just now that's being driven on. Looking at the second group on the road.
This is still the Saxo Bank.
Saxo Bank are working very hard. They've got a plan. And for me, it's Frank Schleck.
It's Frank or Andy. Frank Schleck, in fact, his wife's just had a little baby, and Andy Schleck has said he wants to get the victory here this afternoon to dedicate it to the newborn.
Yeah, which happens to coincide with Frank's birthday as well, don't forget. So it's going to be a big day out if he could get the victory. There's no doubt about that.
There's a lot of pressure on this race now. This is a very difficult part of the world, and I think you're right, Phil. I think the change in course this year to make the circuits a little bit different actually are making it a much more difficult event. There's Damiano Cunego going through.
Another man that enjoys his visits to the Ardennes Classics, Cunego. Not quite the cyclist he was of a couple of years ago, but he still pops up with the premier performances in the Tour of Lombardy at the end of the year.
These guys have got about a 15-second advantage over the front end of the peloton, and Jens Voigt will not slow down. He's not going to surrender until those guys overtake him.
That sometimes can produce another move. There they are, straight through the field here. The peloton appearing to be slower than the breakaway, but they're going back quick now. As the men pass up those drinking bidons. 60 kilometres left to ride here. We're way out in the countryside. We'll circumnavigate on a left-handed circuit, making our way back towards Huy. Drop off these hills via a rather tortuous descent down to the banks of the river, and then run along it and then turn up the climb of the Huy.
Well, the referee got caught out a fraction there. The second half of the main field is starting to make the junction and swelling that into a very big peloton at 60 kilometres to go to the finish. There's still a lot of riders left in this Fleche Wallonne.
1 minute 46 up the road. Palumbo sitting at the back, the former junior world champion on 2 occasions. They've been away since the 44th kilometre that we know of, and they may have got away a bit earlier than that, but that's where we logged them breaking clear. It looks like we could be in autumn at the moment rather than the start of spring, with the golden tints here in the Ardennes. This is a beautiful wooded section of the area, and these boys will base themselves here now, waiting for Liège, so they'll have a few days training in the area as well, building up for the big classic down to Bastogne and back again. La Doyenne of the World Cycling calendar. It's the oldest pro race left on the calendar, and this is the traditional build-up.
Well, most of the riders have been in this part of the world since before the Amstel Gold Race. Once the Amstel Gold Race finished last weekend, they moved across just down the river a fraction to base themselves in Liège. And many of them, as you've said, actually came out to reconnoitre the course this year because of this change of the final circuit around Huy, which is going to be a very tough finale.
Now, what's going to happen here? This little group is still away here. Well, they must be just in front. They've pulled out. Maybe they slowed at the feed, the peloton, just a little bit. This is Rigi sitting at the back. Chris Froome, good move for Chris Froome.
The other rider in the breakaway as well here, Laurent Didier, is the son of Lucien Didier, the Luxembourger who used to ride for the Bernard Hinault squad in the 1970s and 80s. And he's just been brought into the Saxo Bank squad. A lot of rumours running around about Saxo Bank and the look for the new sponsor, but also the possibility that the Schleck brothers may even have their own Luxembourg team next year. And apparently the Prince of the Principality is very keen to try and have them put together a team that will represent Luxembourg.
Well, that will be the icing on the cake for the Grand Duchy of Luxembourg, because they've had their brilliant bike riders, especially Charlie Gall, the angel of the mountains. But since then, they've relied pretty heavily on the Schlecks coming together at the same time as Kim Kirken. So they're going through a good period of cycling in Luxembourg. It's not, amazingly, although it's a landlocked principality, there's not a lot of hills of note. Even the Tour of Luxembourg in the month of June tends to be a flat race, but the Schlecks seem to have mastered the art of climbing, especially Andy.
He is unbelievable in mountains, and last year I think he could have ridden a completely different Tour de France if he hadn't dedicated himself to his brother on a number of occasions. This man, though, is dedicating himself to showing off the French national champions jersey, Dimitri Champion.
Good for him. Not a name that we know a lot about, but he managed to win the title, and I guess that's what matters. He had 5 wins last year, and his last win was at the Road Race Championship, so he's getting a chance to show off the colours until June this year, when he'll defend that title again.
Down to 1 minute and 30 seconds at 57 kilometres to go, and the hills are around the corner for these riders, and very shortly they'll be getting to the climb of Benaïn, which is a very difficult climb of about 5 kilometres.
Let's see, that might be where it all goes a bit wrong for this breakaway, but we'll see. Jens won't give up, you see. He's hanging on, and they're still making that peloton race to cross the gap. By doing this, he's causing the impetus in the bunch, and he's not trying to win for himself. He's trying to set something up for the Schlecks, that's for sure. The springboard has to be the climb, because unlike previous times when it's a long meander into the countryside again, it's a pretty fast lap this time around, so the break could go on the next climb up the Huy.
I have a gut feeling our friend Palumbo at the back of this group here, Phil, is not enjoying his ride out in the Fleche Wallonne this afternoon, because he's looking to me to be under a spot of pressure here, and that gap's starting to increase.
It's stretching, as they say. Stretching rather quickly now. It could be a big twang any minute now. He's just hoping for the top of the climb, because that little group suddenly has accelerated into the sunset.
I don't think he's going to see the top of the climb with these riders. This is one of the early climbs behind Jens Voigt. They were almost caught, that group of Voigt and Laurent Didier, and it just came back to the 10 or 15 seconds. This is the climb of the Côte de Boisseau. It's 1.3 kilometers long. It's only an average gradient of 7.6%, but it's enough to make Palumbo at the back there really suffer.
Yes, and I think it's too long, having lost right at the start of the climb, for him to get back here. He's been unshipped. First signs of disharmony in the breakaway. 1 minute 32 the gap, 56 left to go. Loosely, Champion Gorg and Auger are all that's left.
Champion's got a fine pair of legs on him here this afternoon, keeping the pressure on at the front end of the main field. And he is certainly doing a good job of showing off the French national jersey. But I don't see this as being a winning break, because there's too many big names in the group behind, riders who want to survive.
Boy in green there is Benjamin Gorg for Lambau credit. Now, he's a rider only in his 3rd year as a professional. He had never won a race yet. And best I can find out about him, he finished 153rd in this race last year, which is rather a big finishing list, I must say, for normally the riders climb off with a lap to go if they're not in the hunt for the victory. Might well be the case this year. That was Christophe Riblon, 87. There's the world champion. There he is, Kid Evans.
It's great to see Cadel riding so well in the World Champions jersey, and I really believe he's changed mentally since he's taken that title. He's battled. Here's Jens Voigt. He's back in the main field now, but he's still not going to give up.
The field are all on his back wheel now, and he's still carrying on. He's trying to set up something here for the rest of the team. It's good to see him back in the racing after a horrendous crash when he fell on his face in the mountains of the Tour de France.
Yeah, that was a very dramatic crash and almost a career-ending crash for Jens Voigt, but he said he wasn't going to go out of the sport like that, and he battled his way back in and started racing in the Tour of Missouri last year on his comeback to the top. He actually wanted to ride a lot quicker than that, but the team actually had to put the brakes on a fraction and give him a little bit more time to recuperate. Here, he's sacrificing himself for the team as he does on many occasions, and what he's trying to do is not necessarily catch that leading group, because I think they all believe that group will get caught at any time, but he's trying to toughen it up to make sure the next time they get to the Mur de Huy, they can maybe set something up for Andy or Frank Schleck.
Well, as the observer, I must say I'm looking forward to the climb of the Mur de Huy now, because it is going to be a major assault this time. You can sense the way the riders are racing this race. They are planning a move. They started spreading the rumours midweek to say that this new circuit might cause problems. And I think, look at the way they're blown away here on the Boisseau. A lot of riders suddenly grasping for wheels here. They know now they're in this semi-Belgian classic, Fleche Wallonne. Riders are being shed one after another, all down to the heavy work of Jens Voigt.
And you see the referee there is leapfrogging in front of the riders. He's taking with him the neutral service vehicle there, the yellow vehicle, which will look after anybody now who has a mechanical incident. And he will leave the team cars behind and call them up one by one to make sure that none of the riders who are being dropped at this stage can use the team cars to get themselves back into the race.
Pierre Fedrigo, hero of the Tour de France last year, also being unhitched there in the blue colours of B-Box Telecom. A lot of riders have been thrown. There's Fedrigo on the far side here. A lot of riders, they've climbed this at such a tremendous tempo. Nobody's had a chance to get their second wind. These are the leaders. The leaders down now, a minute and 18 seconds. They're not going to make the Mur de Huy if they keep that pace up back in the peloton.
And main reason for that is because of the pressure at the front end of that group by Jens Voigt and Laurent Didier. It is a bit of a surprise to see Pierre Fedrigo, former French national champion, in difficulty like this.
Well, it's hardly the start of the season in April, but they've been racing now for a couple of weeks. But even so, he will try for a good Tour de France again coming up, and no doubt he'll try for the French national title again, as well as we find Saxo Bank are ones doing all of the damage here. This to me means that somebody, either Frank or Andy, has said to his team, we feel good today, start the hurt.
Toughen the race up, make it that little bit more difficult at 53 kilometres to go. This four-man group is looking at a minute and a quarter advantage. Nice to see on the right-hand side of the road there, Phil. We're in the heart of Belgium here, the Ardennes, and there was a Spanish flag.
Well, Contador has a real chance today, and we haven't seen anything of him. He's just watching, seeing how it all pans out, seeing who's doing all the work. Côte de Boussal now. This is even longer than Boisseau. 53 kilometres to go.
A lot of pressure coming from Champion here, just out of the saddle, keeping it nice and high. He's trying to force that advantage, keep the advantage they got. Ogier knows this part of the world. He's ridden on the circuit for many years as a professional bike rider now, and he realises that he just has to sit there, let Champion set the pace making. See how he's riding over on the right-hand side. Well, no longer on the right-hand side because there's no shelter being offered here by Champion.
Yes, and in fact, Ogier wanting to move left to give him some shelter to come through and set the pace rather than ride in the gutter. Makes sense. We're on the high ground now, above Huy. We'll dive off this down to the valley and then swing around. We're about 15 kilometres away from starting the climb of the Mur de Huy now.
We haven't got over the top of this climb. It's still Saxo Bank on the right-hand side there on the front end of the main field. Really start to toughen it up. And I think they are trying to set it up for a selection next time over the Mur de Huy. Yes, the riders have been over the Mur de Huy once. That was the first climb of the day when they came into Huy for the first time. They went out on this larger circuit, and this year it's a slightly smaller circuit once they go over Huy for the second time. There's Palumbo back in the fold.
Yes, welcome back, and they're not going to let him even get on here as he goes back in. There's a lot of riders willing to race this now.
Well, that leading group, Phil, now is down to 3 because somebody's been left behind.
He was starting to crack, and it now looks as though Gorg has gone off the back here.
Well, that's all to do with the pressure and the tempo that was set at the front by Dimitri Champion, the French national champion. And he realizes that he's got to keep the pressure on over here, because if they can survive over the top of this climb, they've got a very good chance of starting the Mur de Huy at the front of the race, and they could then be joined by a front split of a group of 15 or 20 riders, because my gut tells me today that there's going to be a big attack next time we come to the Mur de Huy.
So we got Loosely tagged on to the back. Only ever had a couple of wins as a pro. And in fact, 6 years since he's had a win, David Loosely. And the two French riders there, Champion and Auger. Auger by far the most experienced, but he doesn't win a lot of races, Stefan, but he does go on these escapades quite a lot. So he knows all about the art of a long breakaway.
A lot of pressure at the front end of this group here. And this looks like Sergei Ivanov, the Russian national champion. He's trying to force the move away from the group. He will take a little bit of pressure off his team. His team have done a lot of pacemaking. In fact, this acceleration here is starting to stretch them out.
He is an amazing rider, this Russian. He keeps his fitness throughout the year. He lands more than the odd big win. He's won just under 40 races as a pro, but he's also getting on a bit now. 35 years of age, albeit only a couple of weeks ago. As they continue to push on, number 51, Tony Martin, landed a bronze medal in the World Time Trial Championships last year. I think I have to say courtesy of Bradley Wiggins, because Wiggins was all set to take the bronze medal position, had a problem with his bike, he threw it over the hedge, and that was the end of that.
I suppose that's what the Australians would call spitting the dummy on that occasion.
Yeah, if he'd just kept his head, he would have still ridden on to that bronze medal, I'm pretty sure, but to a man of his quality, I guess third isn't good enough.
Marco Pinotti there, just making the turn for HTC Columbia. I wouldn't be surprised to see a good ride by Rabobank this afternoon, because they've got a good chance with a man like Oscar Freire. It's the kind of finish that he likes.
Need to be strong. But, you know, we're talking about new names now from the classics of Paris-Roubaix. And, the one man that we always talk about is Sergei Ivanov. He seems to be able to turn his hand to just about every type of race. And he's got some terrific wins in his career. Amstel Gold Race winner last year. And 5th in Liège-Bastogne-Liège. That's still to come, don't forget. And as I said, he's national champion for a 6th time for Russia. And they've got some pretty good riders in Russia.
I'm a bit surprised to see Tony Martin riding so far back. He was the wearer of the white jersey in the Tour de France last year for a long, long time. He's a great prospect for the future, a very good individual time trialist, but maybe not feeling too comfortable on the Flemish, on the Ardennes roads.
Sitting on the wheel of Yvonne Rowney, who is a Russian rider. Another attack going off the front. Endless spurts now, and that's having its effect on the leaders. They're down to 56 seconds, 50 kilometres left to ride. We'll get round to the hill in about 10 kilometres or so's time.
Well, everybody's very keen to try and get off the front end of this group before they get to the start of the Mur de Huy for the next time. It really is a beast of a climb. It gets steeper around the corners. And I think we'll see the first real selection. As you said earlier, Phil, it does look like autumn rather than spring.
It does, doesn't it? Beautiful. There's the peloton. You get the speed here over the ground now. Absolutely flying along here. Another couple of seconds chipped off that breakaway. It's not going to stay away for much longer. There's still that little working light group of 3 trying to cross before everybody else gets up there. That could change if they do reach them.
Well, this again,
they're not going to reach him.
Well, look, this again is a move by Team Katusha. They're obviously this afternoon thinking about either Ivanov, Kim Kirken, or Joachim Rodriguez. He's the kind of rider who would enjoy this summit finish, but they've got to go over the Mur de Huy one more time before they come back down for the finish.
More work required. I'm not sure they've got the faith in this move right at the moment, though. I think that's the way it is just now. That looks like it's Eduard Vorganov attacked onto the back here from Katusha. Been doing a lot of work. Beautiful narrow roads, sun creeping through the trees. The world is rosy just now.
Well, I think the Russian rider on the back too is adopting the same sort of tactic as Jens Voigt. They're trying to toughen this race up to make sure that there is a serious selection next time we come to the Mur de Huy. Just looking down the road there, we'll get a chance to see the technical part of this Ardennes course.
A chance to see the Rabobank rider there, Bram Tankink it is, who's up with this group. Another solid workhorse.
He's a strong rider. They're joined here by AG2R, have decided to put a man into the breakaway as well.
Yeah, that's Bill Kadri, the Frenchman on AG2R.
Good French name, that.
It is. I wonder where he's from.
Alsace-Lorraine. It sounds more German than French.
If he's from the Alsace, that's quite likely, because throughout history you're never sure whether that's France or Germany, that part of the world. At the moment it's France.
There's a list of the 4 riders in this breakaway group now. They've just picked up the man who was dropped. And I tell you one thing, they really are starting to eat into the advantage. They're looking for a minute on that leading group of riders, which is really being steamed along by the French national champion, Dimitri Champion.
Well, at least the sun's out now, warming us all to the occasion. These boys getting on with the job in hand. I can't see Gorg holding on to this lot with the hills still to come. But he'll give his best shot.
He certainly will. They're dropping away now down to the valley road. They'll have a little section of flat alongside the Meuse, and they will think they're going to ride themselves nice and happily into the town of Huy. But unfortunately for them, the organisers are taking a right-hand turn and going up the next climb of the day, which will be the Benaïne. And these riders on the left-hand side, the 3 leaders, they are hoping to survive, Phil, to get to the bottom of the Mur de Huy, still ahead of the rest.
That's the plan, and there's the cavalry, and look at the size of that peloton at the moment. Not flat out, just pacing itself. It's going downhill a little bit here. The split on the screen is between the 2 breakaway groups. We haven't got a timing back to this group, but they're probably no more than 40 seconds behind the second group on the road.
Onto the flatlands now, number 81, French national champion Stéphane Ogier in the red, a seasoned campaigner. We've seen him for many, many years riding at the Tour de France. And he's now starting to grimace a fraction. The hills you can see on the right-hand side is a long chain of hills which actually follows the River Meuse all the way up to Liège. And this race zigzags across that on a number of occasions, creating what is a very difficult midweek classic.
Dimitri Champion here. Great name, as we've said, to be the French champion, but it wasn't a big surprise. He's had a silver medal in the competition before and a 4th place, so he's quite a good wearer of that tricolor jersey of France, loosely looking over his shoulder. He's only won a couple of races in his career, but he's always been well known in front of our television cameras. The big escape artist, and none more so than today, I guess. Back to group number 2, and this is Jurgen van der Walle in the group now.
Now, this is going to add a little bit of firepower, because Jurgen van der Walle is an extremely strong bike rider, and especially in these kind of races, is somebody that Quick-Step count on in the big mountain stages. And the firepower there of Bram Tankink in the orange as well. These guys, though, Phil, they're still locked halfway across the gap between the main field and the leading group of 3 riders.
Not sure what was going on with Kadri there and Tankink, exchange of words, but couldn't see anything wrong with that. Tankink coming back down for his turn at the back, while Kadri's on the radio. Maybe he's got a problem here. Yes, he's called Tankink past him.
Well, it could be a problem with his legs at the moment, because there's been a lot of pressure on this group trying to get across. They're looking for 1 minute and 7, and they're only 40 seconds in front of the main field. So on this long flat road down towards the Meuse, they obviously are in sight of the main peloton.
Well, he won't find a spare pair of legs in the following car, that's for sure. And so if you wear them out, you're out the race. Simple as that. Now, Philippe Gilbert is in the race, and he lives in the area, so maybe we should be thinking about Philippe to make an appearance shortly. There, off the far left, he's getting some food out of his back pocket. He's Nicholas Roach. He's having a very good start to the season. Dad's pleased with him.
Yes, I think he's come on in leaps and bounds over the last 2 years. He was certainly a very mature rider in the Tour de France last year, and very proud to be sporting the title of national champion of Ireland. There's the River Meuse. And when you cross the border over by Maastricht, it's the River Maas.
Yeah, and there's the big barges which course right through 3 countries, Germany, Belgium and Italy, and Holland rather, not Italy.
The next climb on the day, they're going to climb away from here. They'll come into the small town on the outskirts of Huy and take a right-hand turn and climb over the very difficult climb of the Benaïne. I don't think that will rattle the main field. I think they're getting themselves ready to do something on the Côte de Muy next time around, and that's when I think the main field will start to see a little bit of a disintegration.
Funnily enough, the proximity of Holland, a matter of kilometres, yet do you know how long it is, Paul, since we had a Dutch winner of this race?
I would think you'd have to go back an awful long way. I'd hazard a guess it was probably Joop Zoetemelk, but I couldn't tell you when it was.
Well, you're right. It was Joop Zoetemelk. It was 34 years ago, 1976. Even I was a young man.
I wasn't even racing then.
We weren't born, were we?
Zoetemelk was a great bike rider, and he really did dominate a lot of the one-day classics, and he was lucky to win the Tour de France in 1980. I say lucky because Bernard Hinault pulled out and had to abandon because of a bad knee. But I think with the career that he had, he came up against Eddy Merckx. Merckx retired and he thought he was going to dominate the Tour de France, and then all of a sudden this French guy called Bernard Hinault popped up.
Yes, and talked about the day he rode the Tour he would win it in 1978, and he did just that. But you know, in 1980 when he abandoned, I was a young journalist on the Tour de France, and he kept me up very, very late because, typical of Bernard Hinault, he didn't announce his withdrawal from the Tour until 10 o'clock at night, and then I had to totally rewrite the story I'd supplied to the British newspapers, and that was in Pau. And next day Zoetemelk refused to wear the yellow jersey because it didn't seem the done thing. By the end of the day he was officially the leader. He pulled it on the day after that. Pretty honourable of him.
He was a good bike rider, a very quiet man. Now moving to the front, you can start to see a little bit of organisation creeping in. There's Garmin Transitions over on the right-hand side. Now, these guys, the leading group of three here, they've taken the right-hand turn, and we're actually now at the foot of the climb that I like to call, in its full title, the Côte de Benaïne.
A hard, fast, steady drag. I don't remember it being quite as long as this in the past, I must say. They used to fly over it, but it seems to be quite a toughie now.
Well, in previous years, it used to come over the opposite way. They used to drop down here and then go down into the town of Vuilly. And this time, with the change of course, they're actually taking it up what was previously the descent.
Which is much more fun because it's longer. So not much more fun for the riders, of course. And the gap is there, 54 seconds. The chasing group of 5, which we're looking at, minute 46 back to the peloton, which is still keeping this race very much under control, I feel. And the big names we haven't talked about so far, Andy and Frank Schleck and Alberto Contador, and they're right here.
I just saw Frank Schleck actually wears number 5 moving up to the front end of the main field. You can see the black and white jerseys of Team Saxo Bank. They're getting themselves organised. Jens Voigt did a lot of work earlier on to put pressure on this field, to set something up for one of the Schleck brothers. That's the Côte de Benaïne, as it's called, 2.3 kilometres. An average gradient of only 6.5%, but it gets a lot tougher when you get up towards the top and you go out into the open fields.
The blackboard man, slightly different to what we're showing you, but we're more accurate, of course. We're only differing a second or so. There's a beautiful chateau, bears the resemblance of perhaps a German or Luxembourg chateau. We're not far from the borders, but certainly in a lovely location, and they won't even see the race go by.
Well, big pressure now on the front end of the main field because everybody's starting to get a little bit twitchy. We're getting just inside the right racing distance to set something up for the finish. 41 kilometres to go, 42 seconds to the second group on the road, and this is the second group on the road with Jurgen van der Waal, Bram Tankink on the right-hand side for Rabobank, putting a little bit of pressure on. And our friend finally has disappeared, Gorg. He's just popped off the back, and that's not really a surprise.
He'll be heading back to the bunch. With a bit of luck, he'll just stay clear of that peloton till they're over the top. This is a rider from Top Sport Flandern who's launched an attack. May not be quite as heavily marked as others would be, as we've got Rabobank on the right-hand side of our picture. Garmin Transitions with the orange helmets on the left as we look at the peloton. Everything under control. This rider's become the carrot now as they've gone past that lovely chateau in the backdrop.
I still think this is all the stuff that's going on at the back. This is one of the Spanish riders.
No, it was Cassar on the Spanish team.
Astana under difficulty as well now, really struggling quite a bit here. This is the pressure that's going on at the back end of the main field, and the pressure at the front end of the main field too here, because Stéphane Ogier, he's also slipping out the back. And that's because of the pressure of Dimitri Champion, the champion of France, on the front end of the main field.
Yes, and I don't think he's gone off late enough to get back on over the top either, unfortunately.
Well, the Champion really is a man possessed this afternoon. He joined the breakaway after 44 kilometres. Now you can see a little bit of a split starting to happen off the front end of the main field. I think I caught sight of the jersey of the Russian champion. Yes, in second position there is Sergei Ivanov. This is certainly the kind of race that he would like to try and dominate. There's a rider in there as well from Garmin Transitions.
Well, the speed they hit this climb has done a bit of damage at the front just now. Peloton hugging each other for warmth, and the rest trying to get away from the front, driven on by HTC Columbia.
And they've got a gap.
Oh, he came back very quickly. Gorg has now been swept up. Katusha should have got Ivanov, keeping an eye on affairs. Second wheel here. Looks a little bit like Tony Martin, that rider from HTC, on the front.
I wouldn't be surprised for it to be Tony Martin, because he has been riding fairly consistently through the Classics season at the front end of the main field. There you get a chance to see the gap.
Yeah, and there's Auger coming back very quickly. They're coming up to him here. Tanking leading the charge. Kadri under real pressure just now to try and hold on to this.
Jurgen van der Waal is getting the bit between his teeth now. He knows that this is a critical point of the race where the race could split a fraction and have a small group of 10-15 riders coming across, which seems to be the situation there. 34 seconds there looking to the front of the race, a minute to the main field behind. So now you can see the race is slowly starting to come back together. Ivanov looking over his shoulders there. Is anybody going to come with me?
Yeah, somebody from Euskaltel-Euskadi has launched an attack. We haven't seen anything of those riders all day. But they've ridden well in this race in the past. They don't normally ride well in the one-day races, but they have ridden well in this event in the years gone by.
Looks like Zubeldia.
Well, he has a good result reputation in this event, if it is Haimar Zubeldia. 3 riders clear, and the ever-watchful Sergei Ivanov has gone clear as well. Again, this will be an attraction now for a reaction from the peloton. The peloton's ambition, at least by the big names, I think, is to keep this race together until we get to the Huy. Then we will see.
I think when I said the rider from Euskaltel, it was actually Martinez. I meant Egoi Martinez. We used to ride for Lance Armstrong's team, and this year moved across to come and join the team that he raced for before Euskaltel-Euskadi, and he's a good rider when it comes to one-day races like this. But Bram Tanking's not taking any prisoners here, as he's got Jurgen van der Waal out there, Phil, just up against the ropes.
Well, they've got to just give just about everything here, but going nowhere, one has to say. There's little attraction here from the peloton. They're just half a minute behind the next group on the road, 64 seconds behind the front of the race, which is cracking big time. The life at the back has become very unpleasant just now. Riders starting to slip away here. And it's unusual, but to see a rider from HTC Columbia go off the back.
That was Tony Martin, in fact. He's gone from the front to the back, going back very, very quickly. Obviously not in a great day this afternoon. Here's the 2 leaders. They've still got a 30-second advantage over the next group in the road and a minute over the main field. And Champion paying attention to make sure he keeps eating. There are only certain times when you can eat in a race like this, but you've not got to forget about keeping your energy levels topped up. Looking back over the shoulders, they're trying to ascertain just exactly what the race situation is. They can see this counter move coming, and they're probably going to say, right, the best part of the best thing we can do now is to let these guys come up, because there's some serious firepower in this group.
Well, loosely, I think he's done enough to clean up on the King of the Hills here. I saw how he sprinted for the top of the Côte d'Ain. But he's now checking his little route sheet to see how far to go. Well, he's not far from Huy, and there's 40 kilometres left to ride, and it's going to be every man for himself when we come into the town of Huy, and all the pressure as they try to get round the sweeping right-hander onto the climb itself.
Ivanov is very attentive at the front end of the main field. You recognise him in his red, white and blue jersey, champion of Russia, and there's a little bit of a decanting going on at the back end of the main field. There's Alejandro Valverde in the red and black jersey of Case d'Epargne, surrounded by his teammates. They'll be looking after him. They will try to place him towards the front end of the main field as well.
Valverde, he's the last man to do the double, by the way. Did it a couple of years ago now, the Ardennais weekend double, which was a win in this race, then followed by a win in Liège-Bastogne-Liège. Still to come, of course, Liège, so we'll see.
Sergio Paulinho riding at the back there for Team Radio Shack. That's an indication that the pressure is starting to come on this race. This is the left-hand turn. They'll very shortly start the descent into the outskirts of the Mur de Huy. And this group now, having picked up Dimitri Champion, is starting to look a little bit stronger. Big turns being done by Jurgen van der Waal in the blue jersey of Quick Step, and of course Bram Tankink.
7 riders left. Now that's all at the front, and they're all together. 52 seconds to the peloton. These 2 boys at the back are just hanging on a little bit just for the moment. The firepower, Kadri setting the pace. As they continue, then it's Vorganov, the Russian rider, going through, followed by Tankink and Van der Walle.
I think Loosely now, Phil, is going to take a little bit of a back seat. I think he'd be happy to be a passenger in a breakaway like this. Let's not forget, with Champion led this race since the 44th kilometre.
Yeah.
Built themselves a big advantage, and they're still riding well to survive at the front end of this event, but the gap all of a sudden is starting to plummet. It's 30 seconds, but that looks like a lot more than 30 seconds to me.
It's a good gap, but it's all going to go wrong on the climb. That's where they'll make the final move. We've got another Lamprey rider trying to get away here, get up to his teammate. Might be Daniel Origi, HTC Columbia. Can't really recognise that style.
Well, there's a little bit of a grouping going. There's a lot of riders from Euskaltel-Euskadi at the front end of this race, and they're obviously throwing caution to the wall this afternoon because they're an aggressive team. They know how to attack. Katusha in there as well. Katusha are being very attentive. I feel fairly certain that Sergei Ivanov is going to try and do something down towards the end because he's always covering these little moves at the front end of the pack.
And look how the gap, because of the infighting here, is down to half a minute now across the board. The Lamprey rider here likely to be caught up by HTC Columbia. A bit more firepower.
And all of these accelerations are eating into the advantage of that 7-man leading group, and I think now are going to have a hard time actually surviving to the foot of the Mur de Huy because the pressure is starting to come on in the main field.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that this next descent of the Mur de Huy is going to be completely different to previous years because there's only a small circuit to be done once they've gone over the top.
A lot of nervous energy being expended now to try and hold position. Bit of a descent as we work our way down again to the main road. A bit of a sharp left-hander here. Don't normally come around this corner in this direction. All safely round. They're the Tour de France arrows, by the way, because this event is organised these days by the Tour de France people. And the gap down to 26 seconds. Loosely is just hanging on.
There's about 5 kilometres from the bottom of the descent here to the start of the Mur de Huy, so there'll be some serious organisation at the front end of the main field once we drop off this climb.
Looks like a Garmin rider down there, but don't think... Is it a Garmin rider?
It looks like a Garmin jersey there. Garmin Transitions have become a very serious squad this last couple of seasons, and I wonder if Christian van der Velde is going to be the leader for them at the Tour de France this year, with Bradley Wiggins leaving the team after finishing 4th for them in the Tour last year.
Well, that's all possible.
Still a very big peloton for a race like this at this stage of the game with just 37 kilometres left to go. You don't want to be at the back end of the group there. You see how much more difficult it is to accelerate up to speed than the guys at the front have. All of a sudden now we've got the main field stretching out, 2 or 3 riders going clear. This is the lead group.
Nice piece of descending. Good roads this as we continue a long descent here, followed by a sharp hairpin bend. Roads are perfectly dry. Here comes the hairpin bend. Time to apply the brakes. I've seen riders sit on the road here on this bend over the years gone by.
Well, Auger has done well to recover from being dropped and picked up by the group and getting himself back into the lead. So he's riding on experience here this afternoon. Now there's a little counter move. That's a rider from Omega Pharma Lotto, and I wouldn't be surprised to see a move by Philippe Gilbert at 36 kilometres to go. That's the sort of move he would make.
Well, everybody wants to see the hill now. This new finishing circuit seems to have won the praise of the riders as well, because they know that if they can make a move on the climb, has a realistic chance of surviving.
Well, this is the outskirts of Huy. We're about 2 kilometres now to the start of the climb, and this group have just managed to survive still by 31 seconds over the front end of the main field. Bram Tankink wants to take them there. Kadri seems to have recovered a bit. I think he went through a bad patch a few moments ago. On the far side now, Van der Walle. He's a big lanky bike rider, but he can actually climb very well.
He climbs extremely well, and he's had good finishes in the Tour because of it. And Belgians don't produce many climbers these days, since the great Lucien Van Impe. These two are having trouble, but they're still trying to cross the gap. It's a 30-second bridge if they can reach them at the moment. It looks as though it's Craig Lewis who's got into this move, Paul, is it? HTC Columbia. And the rider there is Michael Krieder from Garmin Transitions.
Well, Garmin have done what they
It's
wanted
not Craig Lewis, it's number 58, so it's Peter Velits, sort of recognise his thin legs.
Specialetti. There's the Lamprey rider, big tall Lamprey rider, and there's a move coming from Astana. That's obviously a possibility of trying to set something up for Alberto Contador for the climb.
Very fast approach now as we run down this highway. It'll be a right-hander onto the climb. Nobody in the peloton has given up. It's going to be a free-for-all on the climb to try and break this. If you're strong and you can ride at the front, watch out for moves by Contador, Cadel Evans, the Schlecks, Joachim Rodriguez, who has always had a good ride in this event as well.
I'm a bit surprised there's not too much organisation on the front end of that pack just now, because I would have expected to see one or two of the teams getting themselves organised to lead their men into that final kilometre before the Mur de Huy, because you really do have to start the Mur de Huy in the top 10 or 15 places.
Yeah. Still tapping out the rhythm, the three pursuers. They're three quite strong riders, these three, if they can hold on to this, especially Specialetti from Lamprey. Very strong bike rider. If he's on good form, he should be able to spearhead the charge across the gap.
Well, these guys, I think, will survive now, Phil. They'll start the Mur de Huy at the front, but which ones of them will stay in contact? Because I would say there's some very sore bodies, especially Stéphane Auger, who just got dropped behind on the Côte de Benaïn.
There's no way he can stay on board on this climb now.
And Loosely will be under a little bit of pressure also, because he's part of that original five-man breakaway that got away after 44 kilometres. Halfway across the gap, in no man's land for these riders. Just around the corner, very shortly, we'll be coming into the town of Huy, and that's when they take that nasty right-hand bend, and all of a sudden you've got this wall straight in front of you.
And the lead cars might think of moving a bit further ahead just at the moment, because the peloton, the leaders rather, are flying down here, 65 kilometres an hour. All breathe in for the railway bridge, and there's the peloton. And there's the three that are just off the front, with Peter Velits leading the charge here, and Specialetti.
Well, that looks like the organisation I was expecting now at the front end of the main field. It's difficult to see from this altitude, but I wouldn't be surprised to know
isn't it?
It's Saxo Bank, thinking about Andy and Frank Schleck, trying to get that organisation sorted out for them, and they're tailed there by Omega Pharma Lotto, and that will of course be the lead out for Philippe Gilbert, who'll be the third in that line. There is the red, white and blue champion of Luxembourg, Andy Schleck, and who's on the front giving it pain? Jens Voigt.
Yes, but interestingly, Cunego's team are also moving up here. Bit of a nasty corner for them, especially if you're on the wrong side. There's the split from the air. A long way round from the peloton on the right, but quickly merged back in the pack. Yes, desperate moments right now, because the hill is coming. It won't be decided here, but it could get a breakaway on the move.
I feel certain there will be a big crack in the main field. Jens Voigt is going to ride like a maniac to the bottom of the climb. Look how easy Andy Schleck looks there in the red, white and blue. And yes, Damiano Cunego's got his men coming up to the front to keep him nice and positioned. Also a little bit of fighting going on there for Team Katusha, trying to keep their men Rodriguez and of course Sergei Ivanov in at the front end. It's outgo the lights there for Jens.
Nice little town, this Spa, and we're now down the main street of it here. We race towards the climb itself. Loosely, I think, will lose his ground as well. What about Champion? He's done an awful lot of work today, but he's not afraid yet. Jurgen van der Volle, we might expect to see leave and go forward, but it's from the peloton where the winner will surely come. And it's who can go up the climb in the front half of the split here. Huge efforts being made.
It looked like Oscar Ferreira in person on the front end of the main field, so they may well be looking after somebody else here this afternoon. Omega Pharma Lotto now. They're thinking about their man Philippe Gilbert. He's tucked in over on the right-hand side with the white sunglasses on. Team Sky now getting in the mix in the black jerseys.
Well, the Leaky Gas team on the left. Third team leader here is Roman Kreuziger. We're getting to his time of the year, and he rides well in the small tours, which will start shortly, so we want to test those legs out. There we are. We've swung on to the base of the climb now. It doesn't look that steep, does it? But it's 20% at this point, and as they go round the left-hand corner, it gets steeper.
Well, it looked like Kreuziger in person on the front end of the main field. Stéphane Auger disappearing from this group. You know, we haven't really got to the steepest part of this climb. Once you get to the corners, closer up towards the summit, the corners are around about 25% in gradient. You have to make a point of riding around the outside of the corner, not on the apex of it.
This is life at the front as they get approximately 1/3 up the climb. It does go on a little bit. It looks like Kadri, surprisingly, has gone completely as the peloton rapidly climb into his sights here. I can see Contador dancing on those pedals as well. He's thinking of something.
And Philippe Gilbert now moving up into second place. Here's the move from Andy Schleck on the front, the red, white and blue. Contador has seen that over onto the right-hand side. He is very attentive here this afternoon.
Oh, just look how he sits there, nice and steady. Andy Schleck keeping his gear down. This isn't the climb for the finish. This is a climb to try and break the spirit of the riders. Kadri's passed back into the pack as Schleck, the champion of Luxembourg, goes through. They're all toiling away. The one man I don't see is the world champion, Cadel Evans.
Well, he shouldn't. He should be riding up near the front end of the main field. There's the Russian national champion going round there. In fact, you're right, sir. Cadel Evans is a long way down because that world champion's jersey should be quite visible.
You would think so. The Russian champion's jersey is right up at the front where we expect it. Sergei Ivanov.
There
it is, just gone through. He's got a lot of ground there.
That's about 30th position. That's a long way back for a climb like this. Bram Tankink looks like he's going to be the first man over the top.
It looks as though Evans is gambling on no big decision being made because the other boys have pushed themselves to the front. Well, Champion is a champion today. He drives this race on, but it's all over now. He's just seen his co-part there, the champion of Luxembourg, Andy Schleck, go by. Loosely is also passed backwards now as Schleck powers on. Contador is up here too. Kreuziger is the rider in the green.
Philippe Gilbert there in the white jersey, the white helmet. He's suffering a little bit. Look at the face on him this afternoon. He's hanging onto the wheel there of Alberto Contador. Frank Schleck now moving up into second place behind his brother.
New dad Frank on his birthday, all tucked in, and they're getting a dress rehearsal now as to how to measure their effort when they come up for real next time around. 30 kilometres to go as they take off on this newly revamped finishing circuit. Not very far, about 40 minutes at the most.
Well, Tankink just survives there, but over his shoulder he can probably see Frank Schleck pacing, Andy Schleck, Contador, big names now. Kuhnego's not far off either.
Chris Horner there.
Good to see Horner riding well.
He's having a great season already. Amazing rider, Chris Horner. Now, I thought he was having a heart attack, but in fact he's pressing his little microphone, but he can't speak. Now he's pressed the button. It's such an effort today.
I tell you, this is a beast of a climb. It's actually very difficult to walk up this climb if you're wearing leather-soled shoes because it is so slippery and there's absolutely no traction at all.
Huge efforts. This is Huchrovich, I think, at the back here. Seems to have cracked. Is it?
Well, it's Velits.
Oh, Peter Velits, yeah. Champion of Slovakia, sorry.
You see the long line now, and that's all because of the pressure of the Schleck boys at the front, and Alberto Contador riding very well now. If they bring Contador round the next time towards the summit, he's got a very good chance of winning this bike race, and that would be a feather in his cap.
Time to reassess damage here. Frank Schleck has got himself in the right place, but if he looks over his shoulder, so have quite a few others, and that wasn't the plan, I don't think. Interesting, they've gone up here and nobody has proved exceptional. Contador watched everybody and did nothing. He's off to the right of our picture. Roman Kreuziger is up here as well for leaky gas.
Well, having said that, Frank Schleck has slipped off the front there with a small group of two riders with him.
But look at the size of the peloton. It didn't look like that from the ground level. It actually is quite small.
Well, this is what happens over the top of the Mur de Huy. Everybody hangs on and hangs on till get to the summit. Then all of a sudden, when the gas gets opened up at the top end, you can open up an advantage very quickly indeed. Now, Frank Schleck has seen this as an opportunity.
But that's David Loosely, who's still in here. That's amazing. Tagged onto the back is Loosely. Kreuziger has got up here. That's three of them. Somebody's trying to bridge here. Well, that's Tankink again. So he's managed to hang on. He was caught right on the top. And so they've profited by that. So two of the original brakes, a little bit of new power has come across, a very important new power. Two very strong riders in Kreuziger and Frank Schleck. So the power's off by Andy back here.
Now the question is who's going to chase. There is no organisation, but I think that looks like it's Katusha have decided this is too dangerous a move to allow to go clear.
Well, Bro Andy won't chase, that's for sure. Kreuziger is trying to nip away off the front. Loosely's found his legs to bridge the gap. And Frank, not too sure whether he wants to push this one on or not.
I don't think he's too confident on the mix at the moment. He'd probably be a lot happier if brother Andy was in the breakaway alongside him. Plus the fact that two other riders, Loosely and Bram Tankink, have been in a breakaway themselves for a long time. They probably don't have an awful lot of power, but the presence of Roman Kreuziger here is really important.
Well, Kreuziger off to a great start this year. He won the Tour of Sardinia and he's finished fourth in Paris-Nice, which is always a good guideline for the early season form. Then he's taken a back seat for the while.
Yes,
fifth in the Amstel Gold is a fair result, though, Paul, for him.
Yeah, it is. Kreuziger was third overall in Paris-Nice up until the final day, and he lost it because of the time bonuses on the last day of racing.
I just have the feeling it's not been quite as decisive as they planned, this one.
No, but these guys don't have the organizer. You've got two passengers in this breakaway, really. Loosely, who's been in the breakaway since the start, really, 44 kilometres into the race. Bram Tankink has put a lot of effort into the move to get across to the front end of this race. So there's only two men really capable of working. That's Frank Schleck in second position there, and Roman Kreuziger. So they don't have the full firepower, and I think this breakaway is going to get caught and we'll see something else reform.
But by how many? Because we're down to about 10 chasers there. It depends how much they slow down now. Oh, let's have a look at this. There's a little group. Is this rider Hagedal here at the front just now?
It looks like him. Now this is again a little split, and in fact there's not a lot of riders, Phil, in that group just behind there, so that the damage was done that time when we came over the top of the climb.
It certainly hurt the legs. It's a question of whether they can continue the push at only 28 kilometres to go. There's Andy, far side of this group. Won't do anything to endanger brother Frank. They are the best of friends. He doesn't call him his brother, he calls him his best friend. 9 seconds the gap, though.
Well, that's not very much. That's what they're looking for, but there's groups of 1 and 2 trying to scamper across the gap, and if they can form a slightly bigger group at the front end of the race, then it could see this starting to solidify itself as a serious move. Frank Schleck will be looking for that after the birth of his young child this last week, and of course the fact that it is his birthday. He could be looking for some serious birthday wishes.
Well, he's certainly putting a lot of work in here. Kreuziger won the Tour of Switzerland a couple of years ago, and well, he did a pretty good defence last year because he finished third, won by Fabian Cancellara. Everybody's saying it wasn't really hilly, but you don't find courses in Switzerland that aren't occasionally hilly.
Well, I would always say that any time you go over 2,000 metres, that's reasonably hilly, and the Tour of Switzerland on many occasions, on many stages, went over the 2,000 metre altitude. Yeah. But they say that it was a race designed for Fabian Cancellara. Well, I tell you what, I think it was the riders who made the race, not necessarily the organisers, and Cancellara did exactly what he had to do to keep in contact on the big mountain passes.
And did it well. There's the composition now of a chase group. Nordhaug for Sky is the rider just peeping into our picture here. Made his name in the Tour of Britain last year. That's where they spotted him. And it was Edward Boyson Hagen who suggested they sign him up. So he's got his chance this year on the new Sky team.
Benoit Voronard at the back there for FDJ. Jürgen van den Broek. He's a strong rider on a course like this. And rider Hagedal, a man who's got a very good background pedigree as a mountain biker before he came across to ride on the road.
It's nice to see a North American cyclist doing well from Canada. And that group is strengthening with not everybody. That's a good sign for the race if they can get together and start working. So, and that's in fact Nordhaug, who's gone off the front here, waiting for no one.
27 kilometres to go. They're looking at 10 seconds to get up to the group in front of them. And there you can see, actually, there's a major regrouping going on behind there because the main field, which looked to be scattered and splintered, is starting to reform. There's about 30-40 riders trying to get across to this group.
And looking pretty useful at the moment because I think they've got this race back under control here. The slipping down was Joaquim Rodriguez. He's got a problem here.
Bands on his shoulders there indicating a former Spanish national road racing champion. And he's looking for the team car this afternoon. The referee number 1 is in that car. He keeps a very close eye on what's going on in the race and reports by radio to the team managers of the breakaway formations, the members of riders in that breakaway, and of course the time gaps too.
Former leader of the Tour of Spain, Joachim, but he has enjoyed the Ardennes Classics, but it tends to be Liège is the better one for him. He's had an 8th place finish in this event. He uses this one as primarily as training, I think, for the Liège. Expect to see him up in the front running in what is 4 days' time from now, as we go down even deeper into the heart of the Ardennes.
Ooh, this is a hard move coming from Katusha.
Very strong attack. No reaction from rider Hejjedal. There is a reaction from a Cofidis rider.
Again, I think that's Vogranov going off the front. He was in that breakaway and he was just about to get caught, and I think he's trying to toughen the race up.
Kolobnev.
Could be.
25 to go.
They're obviously looking for a plan here this afternoon, Team Katusha. They want to really put the hammer down. I wonder if he knows that his teammate Joachim Rodriguez has gone to the back of the race.
Remember Kolobnev going towards the end of the Amstel Gold as well. They got wiped out very close to the finish. Maybe another effort here.
On the final climb he was caught and passed.
Yeah.
In fact, he's hit them extremely hard, and that is a very good move. It's been something that Team Katusha have been looking for this afternoon. They've always had men near the front end of the main field. They've done the work when it's been necessary, and on top of that, they've got men held in reserve for the counter move, of course, with Sergei Ivanov, with Kim
maybe
Kierken.
We've been taking our fans' eyes to the wrong man, forgetting all about Kolobnev, who's made a serious move here, and he's gone a long way out. Maybe too far, who knows, 24 kilometres to go, but you do need a big lead if you're going to survive that climb up to the finish. There's no doubt about that, because your legs will collapse.
There's Andy Schleck in third position there, just covering. This race situation is still at the front of the race, that small breakaway. This is Kolobnev, 17 seconds to the next group, 22 seconds back to the main field.
Well, the last time this man got a result in the Fleche Wallonne was 5th place back in 2002. So it's time he came back onto the podium. I think we all agree there. He's got a little gap, 17 seconds. The peloton is at 23, so the peloton is preoccupied at the moment to try and repair the damage of that last climb up the Huy. There's Tankink.
Still the 4 leaders, Frank Schleck at the front, Roman Kreuziger in second place, and the other 2 riders now pretty much are going to be passengers in this move. They're starting to feel the pain of having been in the breakaway for a long time. It's very difficult to produce these efforts at the early part of the season.
And it looks as though Contador's told his boys to start riding, because it's all going to happen on the hill if he can bring this race back together again. Schleck is doing a good job. He's riding second wheel, helping nobody. Brother Frank is up front. So far the day is perfect.
Well, although Contador sent a couple of riders from Astana up to the front end of the main field, he himself is sitting quite a long way back in a pack like that, and he should be a little bit closer to the front, being attentive, because every time you go over these little climbs here in the Fleche Wallonne, you get the acceleration over the top when you get out into the slightly more windy section of the course, and if you're sitting halfway down the main field and there's a split, goodbye Vienna.
They've got themselves a bit better organised. Schleck looking over his shoulder, not going to set any pace at all. Just dropping down 2 or 3 riders. Anybody want a drink? If you're a member of HTC Columbia, the rest doesn't get one.
Astana putting some serious pressure on now, starting to pull Kolobnev back into the fold. Astana are starting to look like a solid squad at the right time of the year as they start and continue their build-up to the Tour de France and Alberto Contador's defence of his Tour de France title.
So, Kolobnev has been brought back by 2 other riders from the former Soviet Union here, Kazakhstan, as they drive through. These are the 2 boys in Kazakhstan doing all the work. And I think it's Fofanov and Iglinsky who are setting the pace here for Astana. And their job now is to wipe everybody out and present Contador with the victory.
Well, that's the plan, and that's what they're thinking about here. They've got 22 kilometres to pull back their leading group of riders there, which is just hovering off the front at 24 seconds. They certainly haven't broken the stranglehold, the group of Schleck and Kreuziger. They're just hovering and they're not going anywhere, and that's because of the organisation at the front end of the main field by Team Astana.
Mind you, having said all that, I mean, Andy Schleck is putting himself in a perfect position if these boys close it right down. Andy's played the perfect teammate. He's also taken a nice big rest. Riding second, third, fourth, fifth wheel all the time.
He's just sitting there letting everybody else do the pacemaking. He's in an ideal position at the official 20-kilometre to go banner, and you can see this peloton is starting to stretch out into a fairly long line, and there'll be some boys at the back there wishing they could raise the white flag of surrender.
One thing's for sure, although they've just added 1 second, 27 seconds is nowhere near enough to survive to the finish. Nobody up there would outride this peloton on the Mer de Huy. Not with the likes of Contador in there, ready to stamp on the pedals and perhaps their authority. It's gone out another second as I speak, mind you. 28 now, but that's a long line. This is quite a good group, all under the expert guidance of Fofanov and Iglinsky from Astana. Coming down the bunch all the way down before we see Contador here, just bottom left of our picture.
But that is a big pressure on the front from that team there of Astana. The two riders are swapping the turns to keep it nice and stretched out in the main field. And you can start to see this is getting to be a little bit grippy at the back end of the main field.
The left of our picture, Kreuziger is the lime green leaky gas colours. Frank having a sit down.
Getting into a rather precarious aerodynamic position. Don't try this one at home, because if you do, you may well find yourself coming unstuck.
Because as you stand up, that saddle hits you in the back and then you fall off.
If you don't know how to handle the bike properly. But Frank Schleck certainly does, mind you. I've seen him crash in a number of occasions going downhill. He's a bit precarious sometimes going around some of the corners. On the right-hand side, though, you can see the boys from Astana. They are not thinking about their own personal positions in this race this afternoon. They're thinking about Alberto Contador. Contador has obviously given them the word that he feels good. He felt good at his last ascent of the climb. I'm a little bit surprised that Case d'Epargne, there is a Case d'Epargne rider just over there on the left-hand side. I'm a little surprised that they haven't come up yet to take any responsibility of the pacemaking at the front.
Well, we haven't seen Valverde at all, because he's still got this threat of suspension hanging over his head. UCI want him banned worldwide now, but they are dragging it out, I must say. The Italians banned him. It seems to be just about every Tom, Dick or Harry can issue suspensions around the world now, rather than the procedure of the old days when it was only the governing body and the federation who could issue the bans, which I think is the fairest way. But what's happened here?
Well, that's Tankink, and he was in the leading group, so I don't know what happened there, and I think he's probably had a wheel passed across to him. One of his teammates looked like he'd stopped there for him.
Well, there's two teammates stopped at the moment. One's gone, two's gone. Well, I'm not sure what's going on here, but they're all back and running now.
That was Robert Gessink, and that was probably Tankink had a problem at the side of the road, and they all looked after Robert Gessink, because he's a rider probably would be looking to do a fine finish for Rabobank here this afternoon.
Yeah.
But now Astana have got 3 riders at the front. They're taking this a little bit more seriously. However, they have in the leading group prized it out to 31 seconds. So it wasn't Bram Tankink who stopped at the side of the road. It was one of the other riders from Rabobank.
I think it was Bauk Malema who was also standing there, but I didn't catch the third one. Anyway, Tankink's happily at the front, and the gap is literally nudging out. 31 seconds now. So far from safe, but clearly Saxo Bank have played their cards. Frank is to go for the long distance win, and Andy's to go for the short sprint up the hill if it all goes wrong. That seems to be the way the Schleck brothers are playing it today.
Well, Kreuziger very prepared to come to the front and do the pacemaking here. He knows that finish at the top of a climb like this is certainly well within his abilities. He's a great individual time trialist. In fact, he laid down the foundations of his Tour of Switzerland on a mountaintop time trial a couple of years ago. He backed that up the following year with a win in the Tour of Romandy. And you see now Case d'Epargne are starting to move up to the front end of the main field.
Well, Astana here, two different types of racing strip. I'm not sure that's in compliance with the world regulations, but even so, 3 of them on the same team working together. They sensed they were going nowhere, so they put a third man on the chase, which is a clear indication that Alberto Contador feels he can win. Now, I think, is that Jens Voigt?
One of the riders from Saxo Bank is not happy with the proximity of the race motorbike, because he thinks that's encouraging and slightly pacing the riders on the front. And he
Which
wants
it is, of course.
Well, they're not quite on the slipstream, but I understand why Jens is doing it.
It's an attraction, isn't it?
It helps psychologically. Anyway, we've put the motorbike to one side.
Now we can't get any good pictures now.
There's Jens Voigt, and he'll be waiting. There's a little move on the right-hand side there by Garmin Transitions as well, getting themselves organised. I'm just looking to... There's Cadell Evans. He's riding alongside Alberto Contador.
The rainbow with a pot of gold at the end, right in the centre of our picture. So he's just sat in that peloton, clearly waiting to see what happens last time up the hill and gambling that nothing escapes. Today, Cadell Evans.
The Irish national champion was in the group as well, over towards the right-hand side, Nicholas Roach. There's a lot of pain in the back end of this main field. There's a lot of riders have had a tough race this afternoon. 15 kilometres to go to the finish.
Nicholas Roach on AG2R, as he has been for 2 seasons now. This will be his 2nd season. Came across from Cofidis, but he's dropped further down now. He's just a bit behind Cadell. And that peloton has regrouped here at 15 kilometres to go, and it's really a high tempo charge down this road just at the moment. And now it's holding 27 seconds, and the boys from Astana, with no help from anybody, is closing.
Well, Cadell Evans was at the back, and now he's right at the front. He's in about 8th or 9th position there. He must have really scooted up through the middle of that main field.
Well, I think he's probably sensed, and we're seeing, that the chase is now on in earnest here.
He's got a rider, a teammate up alongside him as well there from Team BMC, so he's riding right in a good position here. Team Sky getting themselves organised over on the left-hand side in the black jerseys, but the bulk of this pacemaking is still Team Astana.
More than the bulk, all of it, and there's nobody helping them at all, which is... Well, Saxo Bank won't, because they've played one of the 2 cards, and they've got their man up front. There he is.
Frank Schleck looking for the win on his birthday. Roman Kreuziger very happy to do the pacemaking with him, but psychologically it's a bit difficult for these 2 riders, Phil, because they've got 2 passengers on board, and although those 2 riders with them are tired, it's never a good feeling to have somebody sitting in your slipstream, because you know they're actually having a slightly easier ride than you are.
There's only 2 really working here now. I don't think Loosely and Tankink can do much about this. More or less committed, but 14 kilometres to go. They're so close to home.
Yeah, but the gap's coming down now. It's 21 seconds. It was up as high as 35 seconds.
Yeah.
And Astana now are getting very serious about this chase. Sergei Ivanov is riding up there too. You can see the Russian national champion's jersey. And having seen the Cadell Evans over at the he's on the right-hand side now. He's scuttling up. He's being very attentive, Cadell Evans. And he's got a teammate there with him to keep pacing him, keep him up at the front end of the main field.
These roads continue to be twisting, and this is the climb they added in now, and it's not an easy climb this at all, the Côte de Ref, to get us into the finish quicker. We've cut inland again now, and there's only one way, it's over the RF. This is actually quite a toughie at this stage of the game.
This is not a good sign. They're pulling the referee out of the gap, because the gap is inside of the 30-second mark now, and they're trying to make sure that the gap behind this leading group of 4 riders is clean and sterile. And there's the main field.
Yeah, they're making the turn now, not much at all. And the drive is on, and Astana have got themselves a bit of help from Katusha. So they're also interested in doing something. Well, the top man is Rodriguez, Joaquim Rodriguez, I would think.
Well, it could be Rodriguez, it could be Sergei Ivanov, because he's still sitting there in about 7th or 8th position. He's been very attentive, looking for the move here this afternoon. Well, that was a short-lived effort by Katusha, and the reins are once again being taken over by Astana.
And just the same 2 guys.
Well, the man on the front is the champion of Kazakhstan. That's why his jersey's slightly different.
Fofanov, and yeah, they do use the same yellow sun in the centre of the jersey for team and for national title, and that is because Astana being the capital of Kazakhstan, they're very loyal to the country with their colours.
Coming up to the front there, Alberto Contador now starting to act as the team captain. He's moved up into 2nd place. Now there's the move that I've been waiting for, Ivanov.
And who's going with him? Almost doing a Lance Armstrong there, inviting somebody to join him, except he didn't ride away like Lance did on Alpe d'Huez. He's gone straight back into the pack. He tempted everybody, no response, gone back.
Just testing the waters a fraction there to see what was going on.
Well, Roach has moved up. He's just off our picture to the left at the moment. Kolobnev creeping up on the outside again at very high speed.
And again, Katusha starting to form a very strong block at the front end of this main field.
Very twitchy on this climb now, having in effect 18 seconds to the leaders. They'll catch them on the Hui, whatever happens. There's no way, unless Frank Schleck becomes very inspired and dives for the finish from the group. 13 kilometres to go. There's no doubt that Contador has passed the message he can win this race today to his team.
Life at the back, and these riders now are really starting to pop off, and you can see there that the riders from Astana are disappearing, and that's because they've done their job for the day, slipping away from the lead.
Let's goodbye to Matthias Frank here.
Fofenov disappearing back there as well.
The Saxa rider also went very quickly. Fofenov's gone. Well, he should go. He's been riding so well at the front. He's rather tired now.
Ivanov in third position.
It's only Fofenov left to chase. They're all Noffs, aren't they?
Definitely. 1 kilometre to go to the summit. Now, this is not a funny move now. This is a serious move by Ivanov.
This is the second one. Now it's up to the others. This one's for real. No reaction from Fofenov. Well, he couldn't react, could he? It's up to somebody to see if they can control Sergei Ivanov.
Well, you don't give a man like him 40 or 50 metres advantage on the penultimate climb of the day, because he's a tenacious rider once he gets clear. I remember him riding off the front end of the main field on the road into Aix-les-Bains in the Tour de France, and it looked as if they could pull him back any time that they wanted to. Well, they couldn't.
Now, if he let him go, he's a very good time trial rider, and again, lots of changes of direction. That was the lead group gone round the corner. There is Ivanov now dangling, tantalisingly close. It looks like Fofenov's had enough. He's dropped off the front. It's up to everybody else now. There's a counter-attack. I think it's coming from Quick-Step.
Well, he's halfway across the gap here, and he's not got any friends to help him get across this gap. And there's a big reaction coming at the back there. He's looking for about 20 seconds, gets himself down into the time trialing position. Very shortly he'll start the descent down to the outskirts of the town of Huy.
And the field, I think, is going to lasso and reel in Sergei Ivanov, but it's hurt a few riders in this peloton. Just looking down that line, there's no sign of the arrival of Alberto Contador, despite all the work he's told his team to do.
Well, even Cadel Evans, he's riding at the front of the main field. He's slipping back to 20th, 30th place, and he's coming back up to the front end of the main field again. I think it's very difficult to hold your position on a race like today.
Very narrow roads. Once you get out of position, getting back into position is not easy.
Well, he's still locked in at that same distance. He's gone over the top of the climb there, and now he'll start the descent, and very quickly and very rapidly he'll be on the valley road alongside the Meuse once again. He doesn't seem to be eating into the advantage of these four riders, and it's still the same two men working. Frank Schleck, who wears number 5, and Roman Kreuziger, who's in the lime green team colours there of Liquigas. The other two guys, I think, are just happy to be there.
Well, Sergei Ivanov hasn't won a race since that brilliant win he had in the Tour de France in Besançon last year. He's won 2 stages, the one Paul just mentioned in Aix, that was back in 2001. As he gets older, he seems to get better now. Andy Schlecker's moved forward, but that's just to try and regularise the chase and slow it down a little bit.
There's Contador now moving up into about 7th or 8th position in his turquoise Astana jersey. Now here's a move by Garmin Transitions. They're starting to get a little bit twitchy now. 10 kilometres to go. Euskatel-Euskadi looking over their shoulders. Who's going to chase next? Well, Contador says, well, not me. I'm supposed to be saving myself for the final climb of the day.
And I'll tell you, if it wasn't that final climb of the day, it would be a very different race pattern now. They'd be in sheer panic to bring back that little group at 16 seconds, but they're trying to delay the catch because they know somebody will attack. And who can last that hill anyway if they go from the bottom?
That's the question about the Mur de Huy. It's a question of survival. Don't go too early. Don't try and lead the sprint out at 500 metres to go. Don't even try and lead the sprint out at 300 metres to go, because if you do, you will crack before the summit, and the guy who waits the longest is the guy who's going to win.
That's a big gangly ride. It looks like Heyerdahl again for Garmin down there.
I think it is Heyerdahl. He really is looking to put in a good performance. Let's not forget he was second just a couple of days ago in the Amstel Gold Race. He's got a fine pair of legs on him at this season. That
was a great result. That was really a superb finish for him. He had to come late on the climb, and let's remind ourselves straight away, it's not a dissimilar climb as to the Cauberg where the Amstel finished. Not quite as steep at Cauberg, but nonetheless a similar sort of finish. One that you need to judge to perfection.
Cadel Evans tried last year to get himself the victory at the top of this climb, and he got it completely wrong, and he went much too early, and he faded towards the summit inside of the last 50 metres. And that's one thing that you have to remember. This climb, it really holds something in the last 100 metres You've just got to hold on, bide your time and wait before you make the effort.
Yes, history tells you that no Australian ever stood on the podium in Fleche, Wallonne, so it'll be a good day to start today. Still Kreuziger, he's played his card, he's no choice but to push on now. He's got one good man with him in the shape of Fleche. The other two, whenever we see them, are riding third and fourth, so I think they're cooked. 22 seconds, they're really riding very well considering the way this peloton is racing.
Again, Katusha throwing caution to the wind. I presume that Ivanov has been pulled back into the fold. Otherwise they wouldn't be moving like this. That's Ryder Hagedal up there. There's Andy Schleck waiting for the move as well. Schleck is all over everything. He's defending here for his brother to make sure that there's no organised chase at the front end of the main field, hoping that the little bit of an attack slows down the overall average speed of the main field, and that's what's going to happen when they stop like this.
Another good attack then. I think it's Thomas de Gent again from Top Sport Flandern, trying to make a name so he gets a nice contract with the top team next year perhaps. 22 seconds, going nowhere that breakaway, but it's not coming back here either. 9 kilometres to go now.
22 seconds is not a lot on the final kilometre up to the top of the Mur de Huy, but for a man like Kreuziger or Frank Schleck, it could be enough if they were to get to the bottom of the climb with that little bit of advantage. Now that looks like Andreas Kloden. First time I've seen him this year on the right-hand side for Team Radio Shack.
Well, that's good news. Not good news for Andy Schleck. He's just following there as another move goes on the right of our pictures. That quick step now launched an attack. Or was it a Katusha ride again? I think it was quick step.
Those jerseys are very similar. There's the four-man leading group pulling back like this. We get a chance to see the play of the race. 22 seconds, and again it's a long main field that's been stretched out like that long piece of elastic waiting to crack. The crack will come when they come up to the final climb of the day on the slopes of the Mur de Huy.
Surely the finish is not far away now for that breakaway. 17 seconds the gap as they're continuing to make the move here. It is Quick Step and the Française des Jeux. Another nice little large house just off to the left of the route as the 3 leaders go through. 4 leaders, must be 3 chasers. 12 seconds, it's nothing now. Kreuziger doing a lot of work, Schleck doing just enough, the other 2 doing nothing. 8 kilometres, a mere 5 miles to the finish of the Fleche Wallonne.
Well, that's 12 seconds, and this group is started. That was a very risky move coming around that corner there, just cutting off the corner, goes straight over the cobblestones at the risk of a flat tyre. This is the original route down to the finish line in Huy, coming back, actually getting onto the back end of the descent of the Côte de Benaïne.
Well, they're taking risks now. They're desperate men, those 3 riders up front, so near the finish and yet not far enough ahead of the peloton. This is the back of the peloton where these riders just want to get home now and hang on in the peloton at least till the climb. This is a chase group here.
Well, they're at 11 seconds. They won't be able to see that leading group of riders just yet because this is a very tortuous and technical descent on the way down here. Wallonne from Française des Jeux.
And the little guy in orange, I reckon, is Igor Anton, who's made a move here, and he will get up the hill.
He will certainly get up the hill. We've seen him be aggressive in races like the Tour de France. He knows how to go on long escapes. Little left-hand bend here.
Brakes
on. A
on.
bit precarious. Watch it because it's a hairpin. Kreuziger going around in first place.
Racing down towards the bottom road again now. Those 4 riders have been this way before. Be a nice climb coming the other way. 9 seconds the gap, but that's based on the 3 chasers now. I think Kolobnev is the man in with them. Very strong little group. There's the peloton, nothing in it at all. Well, nobody's fallen off on that corner this year. It's a bit disappointing, isn't it?
Fortunately, it's nice and dry, but it's a very tight corner there. We're now down into the valley road, and it's starting to flatten out as we will probably see that banner across the road will indicate 5 kilometres to go, and these guys are still surviving off the front end of the main field. This is the group halfway across the gap.
Yes, and riding very... In fact, Anton is having a little problem keeping up with these boys. Kolobnev, Voronor and Igor Anton.
Well, he'll just take a little bit of a breather there and hope that he can ride the horse to the front end of the race. Just around the corner there, you can see they're just about to make the junction now. This is going to make a 7-man leading group, but the main field is still at only 10 seconds. Vaux-Renard there, Phil, has made the junction, followed by Kolobnev, and Igor Anton, I think, is still hanging tough.
Well, very good piece of riding by those three, but don't sit up and start calculating here what's going on. You've really got to get on with it now. Frank Schleck's not too sure what to do. Oh, and there's been a crash, and that's another Euskaltel rider who's gone down.
Well, I don't know how that happened at all, and that was very nice. It looked like his bike.
I wonder if it was those yellow cones standing in the middle of the road. It was looked like Velasco sitting on the road, judging by a number on his back. Have I got it right? Let's have a look.
I think it was one of those yellow bollards in the middle of the road, and that was a nasty accident.
Oh, that one's a bit bent.
The problem is it's very difficult to see if you're looking at the wheel of the rider in front of you.
Goodness me. It was Velasco from Euskaltel Euskadi. That's a shame when his teammate and captain out front at the moment.
Kolobnev has just gone again. He's just gone over the top of this. Once they made the junction, I think he's escaped.
Well, he's the expert of the late attack. He's also the expert at late attacks not working. So let's see what happens this time around. 4 kilometres out.
Hats off to David Loosley, because the Lamprey rider, despite having been in the breakaway since kilometre 44 on today's race, is actually the one who's making the effort to try and pull Kolobnev back.
Which I wonder what that tells us about Kreuziger and Schleck. Have they decided it's going to be a race up the hill? Or are they allowing the key move here to go off down the road at 4 kilometres out? Alexander Kolobnev pushing for home. It's just fast riding now. And that's how he made his attack. He just rejoined. They all questioned each other's ability, and he went through the middle.
And everyone looked at each other. You see, who's going to go? Who's the next? Who's going to move next? And in fact, it is. You can see David Loosley. There is the gap that he's got, but this is a do-or-die effort now. He's just got to go, not think about anything else, because he can't hold anything else back in the gas tank. He's got an advantage here now because they're just grabbing back the group of Frank Schleck and Roman Kreuziger, and maybe in the confusion, they might not know that Kolobnev is off the front.
A possibility indeed. I suppose Frank Schleck will tell Andy if he gets back into that, as this is his do-or-die effort now. He had a good classic season last year. He was 6th in the Amstel Gold Race. He was 9th in Liège-Bastogne-Liège. He is a very aggressive classics rider. One day he's going to win one, that's for sure. Time is on his side. He'll be 29 years of age in May.
This is Egoy Martinez on the front for Euskaltel Euskadi. Now the move coming from Omega Pharma Lotto, and that's for that man there. That is, of course, Philippe Gilbert. Moving down the outside, it's Cees d'Epargne. I still haven't seen, well, that is it, Alejandro Valverde there, moving up into second spot.
Well, Valverde also knows what it's like to win this race, as he's done it in the past, 2006. But he must feel the weight of the suspension problems on his shoulders. 2 kilometres to go now, and they know exactly what they've got to do. They've been this way before. Not a pretty sight when you look over your shoulder, see Valverde's team chasing you down.
This is a big setup now for Alejandro Valverde. This is definitely the kind of race that suits his abilities. He likes these tough races in the Ardennes and knows exactly how to produce the right explosive effort on a slope like the Mur de Huy. He's got a teammate in front setting the tempo. Not too far away from him is Damiano Cunego. But the big lead out just over to the right with the white jerseys, that's the Lotto squad of Philippe Gilbert. He'll be looking for the win here.
Well, Gilbert is a very good sprinter, but this is hardly a sprint up the Huy. There's the river for the last time. Make the most of it as we now start the climb itself. And the first one to the top wins the prize.
Well, Kolobnev now back in the fold. Lamprey now decided they're the ones to go out onto the attack. But Philippe Gilbert has got his men rallied to the front end of the main field.
Well, that's Matteo Bono who's made a move here. And they played a few nice cards today as well. And that looks like Cloden to me.
Well, it's a rider from Radio Shack, that's for certain.
It's a very, very good effort, but way too early for the climb. Surely they're just under 1 kilometre to go. There they are. The field is shutting them right down. Now, where are the big names? Where's Contador?
Well, I'm just looking to see who's going to take up the pacemaking at the front end of the main field. And again, it's Egoy Martinez. This is going to be the big lead out, Phil, for Euskaltel Euskadi. And maybe Igor Anton is going to get himself the chance now. That is a very good move. That's a rider from Radio Shack. Now, that looks like Cloden.
Yeah, maybe that is Cloden, actually. He's opened some gap there.
That is a very well-timed move. Now, the only thing that he can hope for now, Phil, is that the big challengers in the pack behind start to look at each other, because this is a frightening move.
The thing is, when you sit back in the saddle, that's when the legs complain. He made the big sprint out of the pack, but now he's got to hold on here, and it's an awful long way at full effort around this corner. Sort of climb you choose to do interval training on, but not for real. And there's the move now continuing. Gilbert setting the pace here. Cadel Evans has moved up into third place. Contador has gone through as well. The world champion going head-to-head with Contador. Throughout their career, they've gone head-to-head in the best stage races in the world. Right
up there as well, the other rider from Radio Shack is Chris Horner. He's looking at sneaking into the top 10 there, but you can see this is a great move there. Contador in an ideal position in second place, and in fact these two Spanish riders are starting to open up the gap around these steep corners.
Well, this may be the move. Contador is not making his final card just yet as they continue to come up the hill. Kreuzing is still trying to hang on there. And there goes Cadel Evans as well. He's taking up Joaquin Rodriguez on his wheel. Andy Schleck is just behind those two.
Well, Contador now biding his time. He looks very comfortable there in second position now. I hope he's looked at some of the videos of this race gone by. You have to wait until the last moment before you make your effort. The two Spanish riders here are opening up a gap. There you can see the world champion, Cadel Evans, in third position. He's slowly clawing his way back to the wheel of Alberto Contador.
I have to say, Paul, that Contador does not look great here. He's almost committed, I think, on the wheel of Anton. This is the life down in the pack. It doesn't matter anymore now. Look at Cadel Evans. He's moving smoothly up. He's bringing up Rodriguez. Is there time left, though? Because also note here that Contador's been forced into the lead. Look at the effort now of Cadel Evans. And remember, no Australian has ever won this, and no world champion has won it since 1985 or 6. I'll check on that for you. Claude Crequillon. But Contador now, oh, he's fully committed. I don't think there's much left there.
Well, there's 150 metres left to go, and the race is still going to kick up towards the finish line. Contador and Cadel Evans are locked together, and Evans is now accelerating.
It's all over. The world champion has won the Fleche Wallonne, wearing the world championship jersey. 1985 it was. Crequillon was the Belgian winner on that occasion in the world championship jersey. And Cadel Evans becomes the first Australian to podium. We felt that this was going to be his year in that rainbow stripes. He's a different man.
Well, you can see the damage that the Mur de Huy can do, and no Alejandro Valverde at all on the slopes of the Mur de Huy this afternoon. Chris Horner came across there somewhere inside of the top 10, but that was an ideal move by Cadel Evans, and I wonder if he cast his mind back, Phil, to last year when he went much too early. He attacked a long way out and faded towards the finish line and got pipped. This time, he got it right.
Well, I think he'd be rather pleased now that Jean Lalonde made him go out and look at the course, made him go out and check the finishing climb a couple of days ago. There is the result. Rodriguez getting a second place finish. That's his best. Alberto Contador literally hanging on for third. Anton hanging on for fourth. Cunego, can't say I saw him, but he was up there in fifth. Gilbert sixth. Horner got seventh. Valverde only for him eighth. Andy Schleck ninth. And Ryder Hagedal continues his top form in this classic season. He's got a fine 10th place finish there for Garmin Transitions. He may not like it, but I think that was a good performance because he attacked throughout. We look across the valley here now from the height of the climb of the Huy. Little Jew is just on the right. This is how it happened. Perfectly timed. You only get one chance. If you make a mistake early on, there's no recovery.
What makes you think that that is the acceleration of a former mountain biker too? Because that's the kind of effort that you need on the slopes of a climb like the Mur de Huy. But that was timed to perfection, we have to admit.
A world champion wins, and that's what I think everybody likes to see. It confirms the rainbow jersey. He won in Mendrisio. He's not just a one-off winner. And he gambled a lot today, Paul, because he was never near the front on those climbs of the Huy.
It's amazing with the world jersey, this overwing today.
It's great to win in Fleche Wallonne, first of all, but of course racing with the rainbow jersey is an honour, and winning is even better, I think. It was the, I've been second here before. I think I've been fifth, I've been ninth, I've finished every position but first, so finally to win it is fantastic.
Could you explain the last claim with the two Spanish, with Contador just before you.
Yeah, it's I think it's the my sixth participation in Fleche Wallonne, 6th or 7th, but I'd never done a course reconnaissance. Yesterday, Director Jean Lelang took us out for a course reconnaissance, and I looked at the climb in I saw the climb in a different perspective, and I thought I'd always raced here with the wrong tactic, and I waited right until the last moment, and yeah, I had a good position right from the start, but waited right for the final, and then took them just in the last 100 metres, and that was the way to do it.
He must have been listening to our commentary there. Well, I'm not sure which one spoke the best English there, but 5th in Fleche Wallonne last year for Cadel Evans. Now the world champion is really the number 1, and that was a superb piece of riding. Well taken, well deserved, and a great start for this revamped BMC team.
Yeah, it's always great to see a world champion come across the line to win a bike race, but when he comes across the line to win a classic bike race, that is something else. We always talk about the curse of the rainbow jersey. Well, I've got my fingers crossed that that's not going to be the curse for Cadel Evans this year.
Well, he's got a double aim too. He wants to win both the Giro d'Italia and the Tour de France, and that would be a world championship performance. Speaks Italian, speaks a little bit of French, and he also speaks English, so he's happy. Here's the man who's got second here. Good result for Katusha. They were very much part of this race with all of their players, and so Joaquim Rodriguez gets second.
Yep, he certainly deserves that position. The team did a lot of work. They did a lot of pacemaking. They threw a lot of attacks out at this race. And the man who I think will have to go back and maybe take a feather out of Cadel Evans' book is the man who's going to finish third, Alberto Contador, because he went much too early. And we had explained that as a tactic as well. You've got to be very careful with this hill, because you make a mistake and she'll come back and smack you in the face.
She will. Podium place nonetheless for Alberto Contador. 2 Spanish and an Australian on the podium. My goodness me, how times change over the years. I hope you've enjoyed the coverage of La Fleche Wallonne as the riders take their trophies. We'll say goodbye and roll on Liège-Bastogne-Liège. We'll see you. Goodbye.
Monsieur André-Antoine, donc ministre des Sports, vice-président du gouvernement de la région Wallonne, qui félicite les 3 premiers. Quel podium! On l'a dit, le top 10 est exceptionnel. C'est un top 10 de championnat du monde que nous avons, et sur la plus haute marche du podium, justement, le champion du monde.